All right, so welcome to Redesign once again. We're here now in our fourth blab, and today's discussion is going to be about the psychology behind design. What is it about design that influences people beyond just the business need? And, we've talked about that a lot, of course, the effectiveness of design and the impact it has in the business world. But what this discussion is really about is more, we're going to lean a little bit more towards the aesthetics of design and the subliminal impact that design has. So, Andrew, I know you've been thinking about this a little bit.
Yeah.
Do you have any ideas right off the top of your head now to, get the blab started?
I've written a few things down.
Okay.
I don't want to go too deep to start with. So
Well, just off the top of your head, I mean, what is it about design that, first of all, of course, drew you to the profession, but also, what is it about design that you're so passionate about, and why, besides just making things look nice, what is it about design that you think, really impacts people the way it does?
I think you have to go beyond just looking nice to create the impact. And people who focus purely on the aesthetics, I don't think do design as an industry any favors, because it can become seen as just a case of prettifying something, putting some polish on to something at the end of it. And I think that, in terms of actually where we're talking about psychology, that can be where the problems start, because if you're making something look pretty, or you're making something look like something that it's not, you start treading on the grounds of being unethical when it comes to design. And I think that's the thing
about, like, manipulating somebody then.
Yeah, I think it's good. Using psychology in design well is about enhancing an experience. It's about somebody being able to look at a product and seeing from the colors, the textures and things that you've used, what kind of product it is. And I think bad psychology in design is where you make it look like something but it isn't, where you manipulate people using the psychology.
So you're going right to the negative, aren't you?
I've got it written down, and as I was writing it down, I thought, no, I'll stay away from that for as long as possible. But I seem to have gone right there. But yeah, I mean, we can focus on the positive, absolutely. When the psychology of design is used well, it enhances the whole experience for the end user. And I think when the psychology of design is done well, it's because it is done with the end user in mind. It's about giving as many visual, verbal, sensory clues as you can as to the product or service that you are designing for.
Well, it's very persuasive, isn't it?
Design. It can be, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Imagery, design, it could be a photograph, it could be an illustration. I mean, they're very persuasive. I like to get a little bit into the emotional aspect of design and how it impacts us from an emotional standpoint. And if anybody wants to join us here, there's a couple open seats, so don't be afraid to hop in.
Absolutely. So what about yourself, Paul? What are your thoughts on psychology in design?
Well, let me bring somebody in here. Duncan wants to join us, so we'll bring him in first, and then we'll get right back to it. Okay, he's coming in. Well, I think, design works on so many different levels, I think that, one thing I say a lot is that first impressions matter. Hello, Duncan. Welcome.
Hi, Duncan.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you for opening up the seat here.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for hopping in. I saw you there on the side, and glad to have you join us.
Cheers.
I'm just going to, finish that thought that first impressions, are so important in real life, but also in the business world when we promote things or when we market something, or the brand identity that we put out there. That's really what stands in place for us as people a lot of times, right? For our companies is is the brand. And that's sort of like the visual handshake or the emotional handshake between a business and our markets. So first impressions matter so much. So I think it's so important to have the branding right and to, have your company speak as powerfully as it can, to its main messages, but also to its main passions as well, or, the essence of what you're all about. And I think that can be hugely influential without people even realizing it. The emotional impact that brand has on a person is really, kind of your first introduction to what the company is all about. Duncan, do you have some thoughts on this?
Definitely. I mean, I work at a small graphic design and print studio here in Scotland, actually. And it's very tough to get to all those points that you're mentioning. And it's not easy to figure out what the brand or what, say somebody comes in and they're looking for a whole new identity. It's really hard to figure it out. And it's really hard to get the right questions down in the meetings. It could be from me not having a lot of experience yet with like new clients and, talking to business owners and that in different industries. But I figured I see it as a very challenging kind of thing, really, to figure out what are the true values of someone's company and how to communicate that to them, especially to people that don't have a design taste. They don't have any, some people just come in and they want this whole identity design, but they have no clue and they just want something that looks nice. But it's not all about that. And like Andrew said, a lot of people nowadays copy. So you're kind of, although, you deliver to the client and sure, it looks nice, what's the meaning behind it? It's not all about just having a nice simplistic logo that goes to your Twitter, Facebook, and that's right. It's about getting the message.
It's something more than that. Yeah.
Right.
And I think you're right. I mean, it's really, really hard to do. Hard to do well.
Definitely.
I'm going to bring in somebody else here who's, I think, has a lot to say on that matter. Craig is going to be joining us now. And Craig does design and school branding for educational clients, schools. Craig, welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
G'day.
Oh, Craig.
Hey.
Hello.
How you doing, Duncan?
Good.
So we're talking about the emotional impact and the psychology behind design and branding. And what does that mean to you, Craig?
Oh gosh, I mean, at an emotional on an emotive level, it's really important to my clients in the sense that I'm helping with those areas around pride, with my school clients. So in particular, because I deal in the public school realm, in the independent school realm, or those that are paid for by parents, it's slightly differently. So you're trying to make emotional connections because the school needs their money as well. So there are different ways that you can approach it. I think also that there are fundamental things that we can look at as designers that help create those emotional connections with our content, whether it's on a web page, whether it's in an advert, whether it's a banner. I was just reading this morning, for example, you guys would have read a lot about eye tracking technology, and I was just reminding myself again about the importance of how we read a page, and the different elements on a page that help us to connect with what help us to connect our audience with what we're trying to say. For example, the image is really, really important in relation to the content and how we use that image as a directional element. And so where is the focus and what are we trying to say? And are we wasting, valuable time of our potential clients, by not designing something clearly and concisely. So we're not getting those emotional connections.
Right. And the words are just as important too, right, as the visuals. They really need to fit like a glove. I mean, I like to say that 1 + 1 = 3. If you really make that connection the way it's supposed to be made, the visual and the words play off each other in such a way that it's got a power unlike either one would have if they stood alone.
I was just looking at you would have seen it, I'm sure, the image of the baby. They showed two examples of it was a baby product. And they were showing how the eye tracking technology, they were showing how much focus was put on the baby when the baby was staring, straight out and was all cute and cuddly and everything. And people were making an emotional connection with the image, but it was drawing their attention away from the content. And so what they did was instead of the baby facing outward and looking all cute and cuddly, they turned the baby sideways. So it was staring at the content. And so it was used in a directional way to make an even stronger connection with what was in reality the product. And of course we're, as humans, we're drawn to things that are really, really happy, that make us really, really happy, make us really, really sad, and so when we can do that in a well-designed way, it's incredibly powerful stuff for a business, whether that's a business that's in, us sponsoring children overseas in a poor country, or whether that's a baby product.
Yeah, so true.
Definitely.
I think matching that emotion too with the client is really important. Like some clients are more serious, some are more playful, some are, humor works well. I mean, humor is such a powerful tool, to make a connection with a potential customer. And that just, hits you right in the silly spot, without even, you don't even know it's happening, but it's happening, and it kind of, warms you to a company. And it does so many other things too, but yeah.
I think humor's a really interesting one to bring up as well, Paul, because there are so many different types of humor. You can have the irreverent, wacky humor. You can have, observational criticisms. You can have British humor, self-deprecating humor. There's so many different types of humor, and humor is very effective, but the type of humor you use can or cannot be fitting for your brand. The kind of humor that I'm going to try and think of international brands now, because obviously culturally I'm most aware of British brands.
Right.
But, say we have a company that makes fruit smoothies called Innocent. I don't know if they're national at all, but their packaging is just full of really irreverent, wacky, stupid humor. And they use childish baby words when they describe how the smoothies are made, but they do it in a really clever way. And then you compare that to, say, a serious news publication, but they'll use humor in their advertising. It's kind of really wry, dry, witty humor that people will or won't get. And if you mix the two humors up for those two brands, you ruin everything, because they'd be wrong for the other one. So humor's an interesting one, because there's so many levels to that as well.
Right. What are other devices that we can use as designers to influence a response? Now, again, I'm not talking about the technical things we usually talk about or the business aspects, but what are the emotional triggers? I mean, there's image we talked about, there's humor we talked about, color, right? The color.
Yep.
That
Definitely
ignites an emotional response. For example, for those out there, red or orange energizes us, right? Raises the heartbeat a bit, whereas the blues and the greens are a little bit more soothing and passive. Generally speaking, you can't really pigeonhole all this stuff, but just generally speaking, those are the kinds of things the color does. So what other things? I mean, scale, right? A large image can have a lot of power. A diminutive image or a very tiny format has a precious sort of feeling about it, right? Small and quiet. So there's so many things we can do as designers. Anything else?
I think contrast is another one. I mean, you talk about color, but the contrast or the subtle color schemes,
definitely
create two completely different emotions.
Can I also add to that? You know, when you're thinking about a menu design for a restaurant, one of the things that designers do, or what restaurants do to sell products, is contrast, or sell an item on the menu. So, for example, they'll take the most expensive thing on a menu, some fancy product, you know, food item, and then they'll contrast that with something that's not so expensive, or a couple of other items, and even though, you know, it might be $30. Like the most expensive item might be $40 or something like that. You know, some ribeye done really fancily, and then, you know, another couple of items might be $30. Well, they're still really, really expensive,
right?
But
Definitely.
What we're doing is we're contrasting one off against the other, and the other one looks less expensive, and it looks like more value. But essentially, it's still expensive.
Yeah.
But and so
going back to Andrew's first point, I think manipulation.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Manipulation is happening there.
I think interestingly, I've heard that referred to as Goldilocks pricing, Craig, where, you know, one's too low and one's too high, and then the one of them just seems just right. It's perfectly pitched.
What's interesting too is how they present them from a visual standpoint, right? Menus. I mean, your eye is going to go to that nice, big, juicy kind of steak over the smaller photograph in the corner that's, you know, played down, right? So
the other
manipulated, or really is it influenced? Sorry, Craig?
Yeah, I was just going to say there are so many other aspects. You know, it's about drawing, like when we're talking about the psychology and we're talking about the, you know, what it is we're trying to sell as a brand. It's about drawing attention to those things we want our clients to make an emotional connection with, or making a connection with, just full stop. It may not necessarily be emotional. It's just that we want them to buy a certain product. Or we want them to not be so much not convinced, influenced.
Persuaded, yeah,
influenced by the cost. We want them to be influenced by the product,
right,
that they want. So for example, and we go back to the menu idea, you know, the way we can sort of take, you know, or diminish the idea of the cost, is to do things like take the dollar sign away, you know, from the menu. You know, center a line.
I do that on my invoices too.
but you know, center a line, like rather than having a list of menu items, you know, with and people read down the menu looking at the costs and everything. If you center align them, the focus is not so much on the list, because it's more the items are floating. So there's that psychology. So the people are reading it and going, oh, what do I feel like eating, rather than going, oh, that's expensive. You know.
So how would you feel about a menu that's got these beautiful, gorgeously, you know, lush photographs of food, versus a menu where the lighting is kind of flat and, you know, there's nothing really too special about it?
It's not as tasteful. It's just not as tasteful. You just don't want to pick it up, and you don't want to look at it and buy it.
I don't know what you have in England. I don't know what you have in New Zealand or Scotland, but here we've got all these fast food Chinese restaurants, you know, and you've got this like when you walk in, a lot of times you've got all these photographs just squeezed together, that had been there about 40 years, and they're all yellowed, and they're peeling off the wall, and everything looks really disgusting.
Right.
Now, that's not very appetizing. So from an emotional standpoint, the visual aspect there is just not working. You know?
But then you've got the other aspect where, say, you walk into a McDonald's and you've got a menu with the pictures, and it in no way resembles the squished, wilted lettuce mess that you get in the box when you actually place your order.
Manipulation again, you're talking
Manipulation,
about.
Yeah.
That's right.
I mean, it might sound silly, but it's kind of like what you see is what you get, right? It's kind of like when you see a crappy menu, you're expecting just in your own way of thinking that you're going to get a crappy product or crappy result.
Exactly. So that's the impact, I think, that all visuals have, all design has. This is just a very clear kind of example that everybody can, I think, understand, you know, and that goes on very subtly too. I mean, typography is very important. Typography influences.
Yeah. I was just
feel
waiting to
about
say,
something.
When you were asking, you know, what, you know, we talked about color and we talked about, you know, different things, humor, but typography definitely has some of those qualities like humor, in that you can be humorous with how you use typography, and you know,
Comic Sans is really funny.
There we go. But definitely, I think that draws in an emotion as well. Like talking about emotion, like definitely you can pinpoint all of these things just from color and typography, the actual, you know, things we're putting on the paper and printing off. And so I think they all link together to some degree.
Here's something else that I think a lot of people miss is weight. Like I'm thinking now about stocks, paper stock.
Yep.
If you hand out a card that's really flimsy and, you know, just like wilts in the wind, what kind of an impression does that give somebody about your company? Not a very strong one, right? I mean, if you hand out a nice stiff 100-pound cover, or even, you know, heavier card, that gives a very sturdy, solid impression. It's trustworthy. These are the subtle, you know, psychological things that go on that most people don't think about, because so many people are just trying to save a buck. But if you just put a little bit more thought into it, the influence that design can have, and design goes past what something looks like, it's also how it feels, you know. And in this case, you know, a brochure that's flimsy, that just, again, you know, flops over in your hand, is not going to make the same impression as something that's a lot sturdier.
Oh, there's a question in the comments that I thought was quite clever.
You mean Andrew's question?
Yeah, did we already address that? Sorry. No, we did not.
Well, that's Andrew again, trying to dive deep.
Oh, yeah, that's Andrew. Sorry.
That's Andrew in the corner. Do designers and marketers have a duty to not cross the line between informing and manipulation? Well, I think so. Yeah, it's about integrity, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people don't feel that way, obviously, because we see it everywhere. But, you know, I think the better designers do.
Yeah.
Randy over here, Kayak 360, says pricing and value are different items. Let's see. Let's read this a second.
That's that's a very good point. Pricing and value are completely different, or cost and value are massively different things. You know, I always say this, you know, I guess the easiest everyday example with this is clothing, isn't it, with cost and value? I mean, we're getting away from the subject, so I won't go too in depth.
No, it's all part of the same ball of wax, you know?
Yeah, to a certain extent it is, but I mean, you know, you could buy a $2 t-shirt from a value store, and, you know, within a couple of wears, it's completely bent out of shape, and the fabric's never going to go back to a proper fit. And you spend $20 on a t-shirt, and it lasts for years. Well, which one was the better value? It wasn't the cheaper one.
Right.
And the same can be said, I guess, when it comes to design, about logos or any aspect of design, really. You could pay for something that was cheap but not effective. Right. Or you could pay more for something where the designer actually takes the time to engage emotionally, to understand your audience and how to reach out to them in the best possible way. And you're going to get much more value from spending extra money than you would from spending very little.
Definitely. I agree, Andrew. And I think it's hard to convince some clients that they should spend the extra buck and, get that thicker cardstock paper to have their business cards look nice. Things like little subtle things like that are very important, I think, because, like Paul's saying, like you pick up a business card that's really thin. It looks like it was printed at FedEx or, just, off their own printer. It's not very impressive. And even if they do have a nice logo, it's not all about the logo and branding either. It's a tough thing because a lot of I think a lot of companies that are going through a rebrand or starting up, they want to have a nice looking product at the end of the day, but also it's like, well, if they don't have the budget, then they're not going to get to that point, and it's a difficult thing because you want to design them something nice for their budget, but it's like you could put in a bit more effort if they could just spend the extra buck or try to convince them to spend the extra buck, but.
Just to add to that, I think as designers, we're more than designers; we're consultants, and we have a set of skills and an understanding of the area that quite often our clients, and let's face it, most of us here, and I know there are a few that are not. They deal with much larger companies, but for the majority of us, we're dealing with smaller companies or self-employed individuals, whatever. But I think that part of our job as a designer is to educate. And so, like for example, I recently wrote about my experience, and I get this quite often where I'll have a client ring up and they will say, "Oh, hi, look, I would like a brochure." And I'll say, well, let's have a meeting about this, and it's a Skype meeting generally because that's a really good way of talking these days. And so when we have a Skype meeting, then we're seeing each other face to face, and and that helps things. And then we can start to discuss and we can start to explore exactly what it is that they are needing. It's not what they want, it's what they need. And as designers, we understand more about the need than the want. And I think that's a really important part of our job and our role. Before anything else can take place, we need to understand where exactly they're at, because quite often our clients don't understand all the ins and outs of the psychology of design, the messaging, the strategy, the meaning that we try to capture in the design, as a reflection of their brand. They don't understand the unique characteristics about their company. They don't necessarily understand themselves very well and how to differentiate themselves in a crowded market. And so when they come and say, look, I need a brochure, I could give you a brochure, and quite often I end up not doing a brochure. I end up with so much more. And the reason why I end up with so much more is because I'm addressing the need, not the want. And the need goes so much deeper. And when we can start to explore the need, and we can start to address those fundamental aspects of a business, a brand, then the business owner, and I'm talking more specifically about small businesses and entrepreneurs and that kind of thing, they get excited more because they're starting to see the bigger picture of how this can all sort of start to happen. And then the brochure can come, and the brochure will have the right messaging, it will have the right, connecting blocks and all these sorts of things. So I think that's important.
Clients also learn to respect that we're more about just pretty pictures then at that point too, because we're thinking from a strategy level. Kirsten over here on the side, Blue Maestro UK, is asking about how do you define needs from wants? And I think what what we're talking about is really being able, as Craig just said, see the big picture and present, maybe options or a path that our clients aren't capable of seeing just because we do this every day. And a lot of times they're not immersed in this area the way we are. Also, we have objectivity on their companies, or in Craig's case, schools, that they may not have. Sometimes they have to get outside of themselves, and we're able to bring a perspective very similar maybe to their market or their audience that they're trying to appeal to, that they're not able to see. They're too close to it. And if we can bring that perspective, that's a big part of our jobs, I think. The only problem, I think, though, is that they also start to see dollar signs like, oh, wow, what's that going to cost me? And then, oh, my God, now you're talking about TV spot, too? I mean, I was just talking about a little brochure. Yeah. So how do you get around that? That would be my question.
I mean, I think that a lot of businesses don't understand their unique characteristics, their values proposition, where they want to be in 20 years. Simple things like that. And then on top of that, addressing the pain points. So they're just putting themselves out there and just promoting this, that, and the next thing, but they're not actually thinking about their clients and what are those pain points that require addressing. And, guys like Randy, I can see watching, he understands all of this stuff in relation to websites and design and all these sorts of things. Hey, Randy, I wish you could come on and talk about it, but
he's a virgin. Let me qualify that. A blab virgin. Sorry.
Yeah. but the needs and wants. What are those pain points? And how are we going to address those?
Yeah.
In an emotionally connecting way, using all the psychological design techniques that we know and understand, and then analyzing how it's working, and that's really important. That's a real important part. Is seeing whether it's working.
Back to our focus here, I think you just hit on it. It's like how do we make the client understand those emotional connections that we're able to make? I mean, I like to talk about them a bit, but I don't think people really understand it until they see it. So that's sort of like, maybe a little bit further down the road with clients when they're able to actually see the emotional impact that our work is able to make. So many times, I might have a client who's excited about the project and everything's going along well, but it's really after our work is out there and they start to get feedback from their audience or their market or whoever, that they really see the power in it. And they see how they themselves have become so excited about whatever it is that they're doing. Sometimes we really give new life, I think, to a company that maybe is stagnating. And we make them exciting, more excited about themselves. Their employees might maybe get more excited about where they're working too. So, I mean, this stuff has an enormous impact, what we're talking about here.
Yeah. The point that Kayak 360's made there in the comments about when we present, we have an opportunity to influence the client's final choice. I very rarely present more than one option to my clients, but that's because I get them really heavily involved in the process and in all the decision making that leads up to. And I think if every designer's honest, which one's the right option, the one you really want the client to pick.
And why do we show more options? Because we feel that the client expects it. They feel that they're paying for it, and we feel that they want to make the choice, right?
But what I found is if you're upfront right at the beginning of the process and you say, I'm going to involve you really heavily in this, we're going to make all these decisions together, one clear outcome will reveal itself as we go along. That seems to work really well. Yeah,
I'm going to start doing more and more of that type of thing. Actually, the projects for myself that have gone the smoothest are when I show one option and it's just like done. They're on board, it's done, it's effective, and it's there. Instead of this rigmarole, of showing, 2 or 3 or 6 different options because we feel maybe insecure that, you know, the client wants to see a selection and make a choice. And a lot of times they do expect that. But if we set expectations, Andrew, like you were just saying early on, you know, maybe then we can navigate that and partner with them to arrive together at a solution that makes sense.
I think it also works well because if you're hitting a direction the client's not sure about, you find out really early on in the process. And it's usually just a small sideways shift at that point to get on a track that they're happier with. Yeah, for me, it seems to work really well.
Mm-hmm. It's always fun, that first meeting.
Yeah, yes, it is.
And personally, I usually, if I'm doing a branding project, logo design or something, I'll put in 3 different concepts, but you're right. You always know the one, I mean, you know the one you want, but
and how often, Duncan,
early enough. What's that?
How often, Duncan, do you get, well, I like the contemporary element of that one, but can you mix it with the classical element of that one? And then take the colors from that one?
Oh, that's when the real design process. That's when the real design process starts.
Duncan, what's the moral of the story, Duncan?
Sometimes you can have 3 different ideas merged into one.
No, Duncan, no.
You give your best one.
Right.
You put all your money on the one that you believe is the right one.
Definitely.
And go with that.
Yep. And there's still time to tweak, right? At that point. I mean, the client isn't always involved when we go into our dungeons and create this magic, right? And voila, here it is, right? So it might not be 100% on target still at that point, but we can still take that and arrive at the best solution at that point still, right?
And I think
there's still an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and getting back to the kind of emotional, potentially manipulation, still referring to it at that point as a concept or a proposal, so that your client knows it's not the final thing that you're presenting to them, kind of really helps as well, because that panic of, oh my God, they've designed something I don't like doesn't set in. They're going, oh, it's just a proposal. It's all right. It's just a proposal.
It's funny. Sometimes clients will ask, am I going to see something before, you know, it's printed or before it's launched? Absolutely, man. This is a process. We work together on this stuff, you know, and that's how we arrive at the best, most effective work.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump out, Paul, and let somebody else come in.
Okay.
I am as well. But it was nice speaking to all of you, and definitely took some notes here. So thank you.
If somebody else joining us, and Andrew, I guess we're being abandoned.
Oh, well, we'll manage.
All right.
I'll
see you later.
around.
Nice.
Cheers, Duncan.
Cheers.
Bye-bye. Kristen's here. Oh, she's going to jump in. Oh, wow. We got a bunch of people here that are going to jump in.
Wow.
Wow.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll leave then.
I'm going to bring in Kristen first because she was first.
Have a good Friday, Craig.
Hi.
And David Kutcher is going to join us.
Hey, guys.
Hello, Kristen.
Hey.
Hi, Kristen. Hi, David.
Hey, David. How are you? Good to see you.
I'm just jumping in really quick because we're my partner and I were on the verge of something really cool. But I was like,
it sounded like it. You mentioned that earlier.
That we should come to this, and so we just wanted to honor that and honor you because you do really good work and really appreciate you. So just saying hi, and then I'll catch the replay.
Okay. Any thoughts on what we're talking about before you jump out again?
I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah, we were like literally like on the verge of like exploding some idea between us. And then we were like, oh, wait, remember we were going to jump in there? It's gotten really late. Let's go.
We're talking about the power of design and the visual aspect of marketing and communicating beyond what we normally talk about, which is the business, impact and the business things that we do. We're talking more about now actually the aesthetics and those things that fly a little bit under the radar, like color and texture and heft, or the weight of a stock, all those things make an emotional impact on somebody.
Oh, definitely. Every element, they all work in tandem.
And that's where the true power is in design, right? I mean, we're talking about menus before. We're talking about food photography.
Menus.
No menus. Not
Yeah.
even the drop-down ones. Like activity. I love activity logs.
Yeah, no, I mean it's funny. It's funny the small details that people don't think that matter until they see what actually is in their hands that matters. You know, we have so many clients that they go from wanting something super basic because that's all they know, and as soon as you open their eyes to what's possible beyond that, you know, they start getting more tactile about it and going, oh, well, you know,
then they get it. Yeah.
Once they get past a piece of, like, for example, menus, like a piece of paper that's been laminated, you know, and then they go to what it could be, you know, and they feel it and they go, like, you know, their eyes open up to the realization of something cool they could do. And then it just becomes trying to convey to them or get them to understand the value and why they should do that. You know, what's the value to them? You know, what kind of tactile experience does it add to their business and what they're doing?
Right.
You know, and just like, you know, with we do a lot of work with restaurants. I mean, other businesses as well, but restaurants specifically have a lot of branding needs. And, you know, when they get it where it comes down to the plate that they're serving the food on, you know, they could serve it on just a boring plate or an old plate or whatever. But the moment you get them thinking about what they're plating their food on and you relate that to everything else design-wise, it's amazing what they can open their eyes to.
The silverware, the tablecloths, the music in the background, it all makes an emotional impact. Bye.
Bye, Kristen.
She was waving and
she waved and gave us like the kiss off. It was great.
Yeah. But it's interesting, David, you should mention plates, because I don't know whether this is something that's spread to other countries as well. But British restaurants at the moment seem to be really reluctant to serve food on plates. You get food on blocks of slate, slabs of wood, all sorts of really random things.
Too. I mean, it's becoming. It's not necessarily that it's becoming a thing, but it's their way of really exploring texture. And I think that they've more and more, you know, like gastronomy and everything, they've become fascinated with, you know, different techniques beyond the white plate.
Yeah.
And I think that they're realizing that more and more, you know, it's an experience. There's a great TV show on Netflix at the moment. I think it's Chef's Table. And if you haven't seen it, you should definitely watch it. You know, where they really do, you know, talk about beyond, you know, what the food is, but the experience and everything beyond it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's so fascinating when you look at it that way. Craig's like, yeah, I love Chef's Table. I just linked to one of my clients, his Instagram feed, you know, and yeah, he serves food on slabs or, you know, interesting plateware or whatever. And it's all meant to, you know, create or, extend that experience of what's in front of you.
Mm.
You know,
which is no different than branding.
I mean, has a real art about it, you know. I mean, there's some amazing food photographers, and it just, you know, it just drips or it glistens, or, you know, I was in a studio a long time ago and they were shooting this beer in a frosted mug and getting just the right drips and just the right frost and all this stuff. It's just amazing. And, you know, you see these photos on Instagram, everyone likes to photograph their food, and so many times it just looks so unappetizing. And I'm like, what are these people doing? You know, that's the other side of it, right?
Oh yeah, there's a wide range between good food photographers and crappy food photographers, and it makes all the difference, because if it glistens too much,
right,
it's a complete turnoff.
It looks like shellac or something. Yeah.
It gets icky. You know, you look at it.
People don't realize the tricks that photographers put into this work to make it look great. I mean, it's totally gross. It's like putting shoe polish on a steak to get just the right grilling look, you know, and it's disgusting. But on film, or now, you know, not film, but, you know, on camera, it looks amazing, you know.
Yeah. And it's saturation levels, you know, like,
right.
Do you undersaturate it, oversaturate it? Like, where's the right saturation to actually make it look appetizing versus not appetizing?
so much goes into it, and everyone here is posting their food photographs, all the time, and it's just like, oh my God. So that's another, I think, example of bad visuals that really aren't striking the right chord, and you see it everywhere. Not just Chinese restaurants, like I mentioned earlier, but Instagram too.
Yeah. Totally.
Who else wants to come in here? We've got an open seat. We only have a few minutes left. 15 minutes left.
One of my favorite anecdotes, or one of my favorite things I've heard about kind of the power of design and the thought that can go into design. And it's a tad off topic, but I was listening to an interview with one of the designers from Bentley, the car company. And they were talking about all sorts of different things. But one of the things that he talked about was V8 engines. They completely retune the V8 engines on a Bentley, depending on which country it's being exported to. Because the British idea of a V8 engine comes from kind of 1960s cars like Jaguars. But the German idea of a V8 engine comes from really highly tuned performance kind of endurance racing cars, like the cars that would take part in Le Mans 24-hour. The Italian idea of a V8 engine comes from Ferrari, so they just like them really loud and brash. Whereas in the USA, it's all about the muscle car, and your V8 engine has to be low and throaty and guttural. So every country that they export the Bentley to, they completely change the sound of the V8 engine. So it sounds like what that country believes a V8 engine should sound like.
That's a great point, too. The culture.
Okay, on that note, I'm jumping out of here because that just blew my head. I'll see you guys later.
Cheers, David.
Good talking to you. Yeah. It's amazing how much goes into this and how much people are just not aware of. This stuff is influencing us all the time, not just designers, everybody. We don't design for designers, right? We design for other people. And this stuff is incredibly powerful. And it just leads me to think, though, too, about, all the bad work that's out there, all the crappy design that's out there, all the branding that just misses the mark, all the food photography that's unappetizing. Back to our other theme here, our sub-theme during this blab. And if people just realize the power that this stuff has, I think maybe they'd invest a little bit more in it.
Yeah, definitely. And it's one of those things, because they're working on such a subconscious level, you probably can never be fully aware of all the subtle things that are affecting you.
Right.
Even, people who work in design and marketing and are aware of the tools and the tricks of the trade, we'll only be picking up on the things that will register at a conscious level. There's still probably a load of things that go in under our radar.
Very true. And there's different ways of seeing things too. Let's face it. We were talking about logos the other day, right? And all the things that people are seeing in logo types.
Yeah.
You can't believe people didn't see that, But there's also those other messages that people see that we never saw, and they bring our attention. And sometimes they're right. A lot of times they're wrong, but those things are there too.
Yeah, definitely. What does a V8 engine sound like in New Zealand, Craig?
No, that's more like a Vespa, isn't it?
Yeah. Well,
what does a Volkswagen sound like now that we know they're all dirty?
Hang on, I'll do my
Very nice.
They're good.
Showing off that brand new microphone too. Wow, that's a stunning visual. See now, that's
my helicopter.
That just reeks of quality right there.
Oh, that's a beauty.
Thank you, Andrew.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Staying on topic, though, what were we talking about?
We're talking about anything you want, Craig, as long as it relates to, maybe these hidden messages behind design.
As soon as you guys started talking about food and glistening food, I got excited.
You had to jump back in. I think we started to talk about food right when Craig jumped off.
Oh, I've only just had breakfast.
Oh, wow.
Food. Glorious food. I wanted to add also, like we're talking about design psychology and all of that. I think the eye-catching technology, or I think it's fascinating. Like when you read about that and you read about how eye tracking.
Oh, okay.
Sorry?
Sure. The frickin' Hobbit is talking. Okay. Oh. I'm referring to something David said on the side. That might have sounded a little obscure if you didn't say that.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Out of context.
Yeah, out of context.
I can go back to talking about food. Should we talk about food?
Go on, Craig. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
I've lost my
train of thought. Sorry.
My wife made these amazing.
Lost your wife? Oh.
She made these amazing biscuits. They're just amazing.
Let's see a picture.
I'll post my morning tea. I'll take some posts of my morning tea and I'll stick them on Facebook for everybody.
What's a biscuit in New Zealand? Because I know a biscuit in the US is very different to what we call a biscuit over here.
A biscuit in New Zealand. Okay, let's call it in David's language, a cookie.
Right, I'm with you.
My wife made some cookies.
All right, so bring it back a little bit.
Sorry.
Food.
Blame David. He called me a frickin' hobbit.
How about smell? Right? Sometimes stores pump in, smell to make it.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about smell.
Well, how about, all right.
Okay, one I heard the other day, they say that the mascots on boxes of cereal aimed at children, if you look, they're all looking down. So that children stood on the floor believe they're making eye contact with them. Now, I don't know whether that's true, and I don't know whether that's a manipulation thing or whether it's just a quirk of the design. Because they've usually got a big bowl of cereal below them. They're looking down at it, looking hungry.
I once had an internship back in my school days for Ralston Purina. So Ralston Foods, the human.
Right.
Purina was the pet foods, side.
Mm-hmm.
Ralston was, Czech cereal and things like that. So yeah, we spent a lot of time on the psychology behind what the imagery looks like on a cereal box.
Yeah.
And is it a photograph? Is it an illustration? What scale is the cereal going to be on the spoon? You know how you always have to show a close-up what the cereal actually looks like on the spoon?
Yeah.
All those things play into it. Or I remember once we had to design the logo type so that it was really solid. And the client themselves said, the product manager said that we want this logo to be so solid that if you bunched it up and rolled it down a hill, it wouldn't fall apart. That was how they sort of like explained it visually so that we could interpret it visually. So all that stuff, plays a role. Yeah.
I just, my wife bought some new Greek yogurt. How do you pronounce it in America?
Yogurt.
Yogurt.
Yogurt
here. Yogurt somewhere else. And it was Greek stuff. I'm mad on Greek yogurt. Yogurt. And but the branding on the yogurt was quite different. And I'd have to say it influenced me, or it influenced my wife in trying it, because it just stood out on the shelf.
Yeah.
Quite often we're influenced by those things around us, but when we can kind of, there's that word again, disrupt the shelf with something fresh and new and reinvigorating, then it gets our attention. I'll go and get it and I'll show you, because it's about food and I love food.
Sure.
Hang on.
I'm going to make a point in the meantime about pets again and about selling pet goods. When you sell pet food, right, you're not selling to animals, you're selling to humans, right? So you're trying to make an emotional connection with humans, even though it's all around pets and animals. Yeah. So that really played into the psychology of the design and the marketing, when we would, you know, create packaging, but also those ads, you know, that slip out of your newspaper or your circulars, you know, all that advertising is really selling to humans. And another interesting aside that's similar to that is when I was at the NFL, we realized that, you know, most NFL sports fans also have dogs and cats. They're huge pet fanatics. So we created a whole separate, you know, niche market where we sold NFL pet products. We developed this brand around it. And the first objective was, of course, to get retailers to sign on, you know, so that we could sell pet products, you know, in a specific section that marketed, you know, NFL pet products. But also we were trying to appeal to pet owners on an emotional level because, you know, pet owners are just as fanatical about their pets as they are about their football games. So making that connection, you know, is very important. And again, it points right to the psychology of design and branding.
Now,
and pet owners spend a lot of money, David.
Now this one here.
Yep.
This is my usual brand. That I quite
natural.
Like. Yep, Greek natural. Now, this one stood out on the shelf to me as new. Hang on. So it's quite. I'll just. Can you see that? Okay.
Yep. Natural, blue bowl, splashy kind of watercolor. Emblem going on.
Yeah, and it's quite different. You know, it's got a real kind of sense of branding of the you know, it's sort of capturing this idea of freshness and sort of, you know, natural, and it's attracting my eye. It's getting my attention on the shelf. Now, if you put the two together, which one looks more interesting?
It's really nice to see a Greek yogurt that doesn't use a kind of papyrus style typeface to try and evoke ancient Greek.
Yeah, quite different, isn't it?
Yeah,
and
definitely.
And so, you know, that's the power of the brand, and it tastes good too.
Yeah.
So, you know, what's funny about 20 years ago, generic packaging, the no name packaging you'd see in our supermarkets, there was always a brand or a supermarket type of brand that was just like white boxes with a name across it. Now it's a lot more sophisticated. But what was kind of interesting and depressing at the same time was that it was actually the generic packaging that stood out on the shelf more than anything else. So here we are as designers trying to create this packaging that's so interesting, that stands out, but it was always the white space, the white packaging, the generic brand that captured your attention just by.
There's a massive supermarket brand in the UK called Tesco, and they produced probably kind of in the mid-90s. They started pioneering. They were one of the first supermarkets to start pioneering their own value brand of products. And like you say, it was very plain packaging, and it just had kind of the Tesco logo is like a blue, almost like kind of barcode thing with the with the name Tesco underneath. And it became, you know, like things in that range became known as blue stripy sausages or blue stripy yogurt or blue stripy. You know, it became a real. It became such a cliche that their value stuff was that, and they only changed it about last year to bring it a bit more up market because the bottom was falling out of their value range stuff because other supermarkets are opening up, but that were doing all value, and took that bit of brand differentiation away from them. But like you say, that's almost the opposite of a lot of other branding. A lot of other branding is trying to add value, and they were trying to take as much value away as possible to make the product look incredibly cheap.
Right.
And using that as their main selling point.
Amazing. Well, you can see that there's a lot here, right? There's a lot to talk about. And once again, I think we could talk for another 6 hours, but our time is up, guys. Thanks so much for joining us once again. It's so great to hang out with you guys and talk about this stuff. And thank you to everybody else who's joined in on the side as well. We can keep talking there on the side if you'd like. So we're going to, post this recording on YouTube. You can check it out there after the fact. There's other chats we've had there as well. If you want to check those out too, you're welcome. So I'll be tweeting that stuff. I can put the link here as well. But again, thanks a lot for joining us, and we can keep talking here if you want, but the recording is going to end. So have a good day, everybody.
Cheerio.